I got up close and personal with grief at a very young age. My mom remarrying and then us moving to Georgia and me leaving my granddaddy and my meemaw, everything that I knew. And then when I was 11, my granddaddy died. The rock of my foundation was just, shooken. I mean, I think about my mom and the grief, but really that was my first, whoa. A lot of my grief therapy did not necessarily have to do with losing my mom. It was the trauma of the hospital, the chemo, the trauma of it, because it's so hard.
My dad died at 60. I was way too early, and I never lost anyone.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange thing the first time on. But I have a big family. Even in dysfunction, when we were alcoholics, my mom, who I give plenty of grief to, was praying for me, and my sisters who if they've sinned, it's probably been on two hands, they're like little angels. And we had something there. I mean, you were really kind of by yourself.
It's totally by myself.
Welcome to the Good Grief, Good God Show, hosted by Grammy nominee and Emmy award-winning hit songwriter Brad Warren of the Warren Brothers. Join Brad monthly on the first, third, and fifth Tuesdays in audio or on YouTube for raw, honest conversation about surviving things that suck. For today's episode, Brad welcomes 2024's Music Rose Female Songwriter of the Year and CMA and ACM award-winning singer-songwriter Jessi Alexander. Jessie's songs have been recorded by some of music's biggest stars, including Tim McGraw, Celine Dion, Miranda Lambert, Miley Cyrus, Blake Shelton, and Trisha Yearwood. Her works include Lee Brice's hit I Drive Your Truck, which won both the CMA and ACM Song of the Year. Her latest album, Decatur County Red, released in 2020, captures her most authentic self, reflecting on her Tennessee roots and life journey, topics she will explore with Brad in this episode. And lastly, Jessie is married to Grammy, ACM, CMA award-winning singer, songwriter, and producer John Randall. I'm producer Matt Pivito. To learn more about today's guest, Brad, and the show, check the description where you'll find clickable links to access this episode's audio and video links, to connect to the show on social media, and to visit goodgriefgoodgodshow.com. Lastly, we value your feedback, so please hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us a comment or review. On the behalf of Brad's wife and executive producer, Michelle Warren, and segment producer and guest booker, Lisa Bolt, thank you for tuning in. Good Grief, Good God Show is brought to you in loving memory of Sage Michael Warren.
I just listened to your Jimmy Lee Solace. I'm so obsessed with this podcast. I've listened to almost all the episodes. Even with people that I know. I'm I know all these stories.
I know what you're gonna tell. It's funny about doing this because I was like, this is the first day I haven't sitting here, but I'm not using notes with Jessie. I really don't have to.
You don't need notes.
But I know most of your story, but I kind of want it in order. I want it I want to cry. Yeah, and I certainly don't. I'm sure there's.
My grief counselor's so proud of me right now because we've been working up to this and a couple other things, but it's true. It's I know I don't even know if you're rolling, but it's grief journey is not, there's not an end point. You know what I mean? It's not you don't go, I'm going to go to grief counseling for 6 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You might need it 10 years from now. You might need 20 years from now.
Oh yeah.
You might think you've got it licked,
Oh no, I don't think there's ever got it licked. Well, okay, so the interesting conversation I had before this, because I knew that you hadn't talked about this stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm with your husband in Texas in January, and he goes, I'm so glad Jessie's doing your podcast. I said, me too. That was one of the first things I thought, but I knew that she wasn't, wasn't really ready to do that. He goes, yeah, we haven't even talked about all of that stuff. I'm like, oh, wow. He goes, so I'm really looking forward to this.
I was telling him this morning though, because he's like, how do you feel? I said, I feel like if you were in an interview and someone said, hey, in one sentence, what's Tony Rice mean for the bluegrass? You'd be like, well, how much time do you have? You wouldn't even do it because you'd be like, if I can't tell you everything about Tony Rice,
I can't tell you anything.
I think that's probably why it's hard to talk about it, is because it's you either talk about it or you want to give it the time, the time and the energy and the power of what it is and what it was. And it's not something you just
This wasn't going to be in a short form interview.
Yeah, exactly.
We're sound bites.
Yeah.
And
it deserves more.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah. So
that's cool. I'm honored that you're here.
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's really cool. You're one of the first people I wanted to have to do this. And You know, it's funny when Tully Kennedy came on, who's our friend, whatever, and we talked about the Vegas shooting he said he never ever talked about it before for the first time. Yeah. And I said, well, I didn't want you to do this just because it was me. And he goes, oh, I did. He said,
yeah. I did.
He goes, I did. This is big. But but after we did it, he's like, wow, man, I really needed to do this.
Yeah. You don't know that you need to until you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, you guys have talked to me about doing this for a while. A year ago, I remember being like, no way. No way, no way. And then I was like, why no way? Like, why no way? Like, because it's not like I have any secrets or, it's like, no, but I think it was like, I'd already started doing some grief work with a great lady. Shout out Cameron. She's so happy I'm here right now. But it's funny how God, if you say like, I need to work through this, help me work through this, God will deliver. Like some crazy things have happened in this last year for me because like, how do you even work through it? Like, obviously you can go to grief counseling, but there's so many other doors that have opened, which we can get into if you want, where it was like little God winks of like, this is how I'm going to help you. Yeah. So it's cool.
It's amazing. I think willingness is the key, like he will
absolutely
kind of provide that thing if I'm looking. And then I guess if God wants our attention more than anything, he'll do whatever it takes to get our attention.
Yes.
If that's really the desire that we have down deep.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't want your attention or whatever it is. I don't
Please, no.
Like, let's, enough growing, enough testing and trialing. But it's,
the biggest one was avoiding. I think like I've spent 20 plus years now avoiding dealing with it. And so once you go, okay, I won't avoid, like, I'll be brave. It's like, okay, well then let me help you, show you. And those are the hard ones.
Like intentionally diving into a pool that is going to be
that sucks.
Kinks.
Yeah.
That's the weird part of this.
Totally.
My little dad's group, the therapies that we do, these talks.
Yep.
At the same time, and I want to kind of start from your beginning because I want to know more.
Yeah.
But when Sage died, you were one of the 5 people I could sit in a room and write a song with because you knew. Like it was like
you're in the club.
I just told Brett, I said, anyone we work with for the next whatever is someone that I have to be able to have a really bad day in front of.
Absolutely.
If it happens, that I can just and we're close anyway. I love your whole family.
I love you. They love you. Ryman said Maddie's not here.
Oh gosh, your kids are just the coolest. I mean, really, really do love and close in that way. But there's just something about people who've experienced grief. That whenever that happened, it was like there's a small swath of people, and God love the people that I'm close to and I love that don't know how this is.
I know. How
so
great,
happy for
how
you.
Lucky.
Yeah, how lucky. Good for you.
Yeah.
But you can't replace this. Someone said the other day, it's almost like we're arrogant about our grief. If you haven't had enough happen to you, you can't really be in the club. And I said, that's not a good club. It's not
a club you want to be in.
But it's the truth. There is only a certain level that you get to once you have been, your puppies have been run over.
Absolutely. And it is a club. It's like a knowing. It's like, I know, I see you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Especially for me when people lose their mothers, there's just walking around without a mom for that's a very special club, at a young age. As a child,
course,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's that connection. And it's in some ways it's beautiful because you have kind of faced the like hardest thing, that you can get through it.
Yeah.
But then there's also like just probably that heartbreak that never goes away.
There's that element of bring it on.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I got it.
Yeah.
I really do have some of that most of the time. And then there are other days that there's just like, oh, there's this gaping hole that's never going to get filled.
Never.
What is,
Yeah.
And you could say and do all the right things. And yes, God will fill that hole for you. And he does. But some days it's just a crater full of nothing there and nothing you can do about it. So I want to start a little bit because I don't usually go any chronological thing, but your story on its own is so interesting. Then there's a couple of the song stories I'm going to make you tell because it's amazing. And then the talk about your mom and the grief and where we go to. So you were one of my very favorite singer-songwriters on earth. There's a couple of songwriters like you and Natalie Hemby that if I was a female artist, I can't believe someone even wants to sing something you've already sang. It's got to be incredibly intimidating by them. That's why you have so many guy cuts.
That's right. That's right.
Men sing your song.
That's right.
But beyond all that, we go. It's your story. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
weird things, just alcoholism, I think. And you don't know
where
you want to talk about. So
sure. I'll definitely talk about that.
West Tennessee
West Tennessee. I grew up in a very blue collar family. Like nobody did this before me, you know, mainly non-college educated, blue collar carpenters, secretaries, you know, things like that. So I have like no real reason to be here other than God having a plan for me. Because, you know, when I look back and if you know, kind of deep dive into my early life, we'd go, how did this happen? You know, a lot of people wouldn't expect it. So, I don't know where you want me to start, but just, you know, a lot of kind of dark tragedy right away in terms of like no stable home. My parents divorced when I was 3. My dad is an alcoholic or addict, in recovery. And so like the weird thing about being in a divorced home though, is like, you know, you have my mom who is very like, she was going through, how do I be a single mom? I'm an only child. And then, and she would be like the hard work, like we were on food stamps, and like we were going to Goodwill for clothes, you know, we're just like that kind of life. But then I, my dad, who was a creative and partying and, you know, Memphis. And so I just think about my mom thinking like, gosh, she would like send me out to be, because we had joint custody. So she'd send me to my dad's and it'd be like, wow. I mean, I was getting an eyeful of music though. Art, music.
Did you prefer one over the other?
During those years, because this is before my mom remarried, but I think I don't innately didn't love either because there's a lot of dysfunction. My grandparents, so I remember in kindergarten, they asked, you had to learn how to write your address. And I remember thinking, I don't have one address. I have me, mom, granddaddy's, my mom's, and my dad's.
Yeah.
And so that's a weird
dysfunction.
Yeah, that's a weird like way to like go, I don't like have the home life that everybody else has. My mom, my granddaddy were my like rocks. They were the ones that were the sane. And I think about like my work ethic. People are like, where does this come from? Like, it's my granddaddy and my meemaw. She was raised on a farm with 8 brothers and sisters. As he had 9 brothers and sisters, she learned how to farm, like no electricity, rural West Tennessee. So she even worked at Porter Cable Tools, which is what I thought I was going to do, because all my family were like in tool repair and stuff like that. But she's like, even when she retired, she kept working. Like she even in a accident cut off her finger and kept working. Like this woman was the grit of grit. That is my meemaw.
My dad did that, by the way.
Did he?
He cut his finger off in a motorcycle chain, walked in and handed it to my mom.
Yeah.
And put a rag on it when outside. Never went to the hospital. Yeah. He never went to the hospital and just, yeah.
It never went. Yeah. So, when I look back,
tougher generations than we're experiencing now.
Yeah. And so, you know, I was thinking about like grief, like how it played into my early years, like, cause you'd think my mom, but really, I got up close and personal with grief at a very young age. When I think about like, my mom remarrying and then us moving to Georgia and me leaving my granddaddy and my meemaw, everything that I knew, leaving my dad and like grieving, like my mom's remarrying this person that I don't know. It's not my family and we're moving to Georgia. And, that was like the first grief of like, gosh, you know, I'm 9 years old. Like I have to start over. I'm an only child. And that was tough. That was the first. And so they would, because of the joint custody, I would be going back and forth from Jackson, Tennessee to Duluth, Georgia, back and forth. And then when I was 11, my granddaddy died. And that was just the most tragic, you know. It was like the rock of my foundation was just, you know, shooken. And so, I mean, I think about my mom and the grief, but really that was my first, like, whoa, like everything that's, you know, foundational and the goodness in your life can be gone.
That was kind of like losing your father for you.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
that was the father figure. And
yes.
And that
yeah,
11 years old to not have the male figure in your life anymore. I didn't realize that. That's a big
and I almost think that one's maybe not as big as cancer with my mom
but it was earlier.
And it was definitely like not okay. So we also I know where we're very different is you had faith and religion in your life. I didn't. Nobody. That just wasn't part of my childhood story. So I didn't have that.
I had a little too much.
Yeah. You had too much. I had none.
But
so imagine going through something like that without faith. Like, whoa. And so I can remember going to his funeral and just being like, what? Like seeing him in a casket, just how could he be here and then gone? And then, Meemaw, they were so close. My Meemaw and Granddaddy were so close that I lost her kind of in a way. Because she was never the same.
Never the same again. And how long have they been married?
Oh God. I mean,
50 years or something.
Whatever.
One of those crazy.
Yeah. And then my dad, who had kind of been keeping it contained on the rails, for a while, when Granddaddy was gone, it was, I think.
Was that his dad and mom? Interesting, because Brett and I went off the rails
after
when my dad died. Yeah. Now we were bad, and it was a problem, but we did things and went places we never would have gone. We never ever. Yeah. Just when my dad died, it just all several reasons. One, there was grief involved in that we never really dealt with. One of them also, though, probably for your dad, was there's no one I feel accountable to.
That's exactly right.
I don't have anyone to answer to that I care what they think, except for that man. And he's gone. So now
he's gone. And they had a kind of I think a troubled relationship, but it was just it was a game changer.
And this is probably something we cover as we get on. But one of when we first met, I don't remember when we met, but one of the first conversations that I had with you when we were writing, and I don't know exactly how it came up, but it was early on because you were asking me about our journey in alcoholism. And I said, my wife, and I told you about it. And you said, ooh, she walked all the way through that with you, huh?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And you said, well, you got a good wife. And I said, I know, I do. But it was very early because you knew what it would be to walk through that with someone. Yes. And I can see probably what happened with your dad losing his dad, but it was, and similar.
I was still too young to know, still to really understand like where things were going to get for my dad. And I live, so far away from him. And so he lost me and he lost his dad and virtually his mom. Cause like I said, she was never the same. So it was just like, whew, it definitely was rough. And my mom, for whatever reason, she kind of left my dad for a lot of the obvious reasons, alcoholism and things, but then she just kind of married another version, a more put together, has a job kind of version. And Roger, served a great purpose in my life as well. But it wasn't like she was taking me out of this home life and taking me into a much better one. There was a lot of dysfunction and alcohol in that relationship as well. So that though in Georgia was, I didn't want to be in my house a lot. I got to one of my best friends, like I would go stay at her house quite a bit. And I think her parents would be like, yeah, you come on over. Things are not great at my home. So it was the first time that someone said to me, hey, we go to a thing called Al-Anon because this friend of mine's mom had been married to an alcoholic. She's like, I think you should come. They do Alateen classes, even though I wasn't a teenager yet. I walked into my first Alateen meeting at like 11 or 12. That all happened around the same time.
That's awesome.
I was just
going to say, if your mom had gone to Al-Anon, she probably wouldn't have married the second guy.
Absolutely not. Exactly. And so I was like, wow, the big book. I learned everything that you can learn in terms of boundaries, how to cope, like some of those tools early on, like think about it, because nobody's going to give me counseling. I didn't get grief counseling from my granddaddy. I didn't have divorce counseling. There was no counseling. There was no therapy.
Yeah.
But there was Alateen. And so I remember walking into this little church, and I hadn't grown up in a church, and going to a little meeting room with a bunch of other little kids. And so interesting to me.
It's amazing.
It was amazing.
That. And it probably at the time was the closest thing to helpful that you.
It was, it's all I had. Exactly.
Some kids don't. I really, and I actually took my boys a few times. The problem is there weren't enough kids to.
Really?
There was like 3 kids, and it was a little bit. But I believed in that so much. But when kids are in what seems to be a stable life, well, why are we dealing with this? We're fine now. Yeah. But I'm like, no, but there's. It's lasting. Recovery doesn't end just like grief doesn't end.
No,
I'm in recovery. I go to meetings. I sponsor people. I have a sponsor. It doesn't end.
It doesn't end.
I hope it never ends, because if it does, I'm not healthy. If I ever tell you that I'm recovered and we're done,
I'll be like,
we're in trouble. And even if a lot of people just don't drink and don't have a program, but it's a healthier life. I mean, it's just a healthier life. So good for you. That's crazy. You went to Al that early. Okay.
And then, those years were good because I had a lot to cope with. I had to start, the older I got, the more I come back to Jackson, Memphis, and see my dad's. It got really bad for many years, and to where, I look back, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have been these parties that I was at or these bars that I was at. I mean, yes, I learned how to shoot pool at a young age, or learned how to drive
There's a valuable tool.
Yeah, learned how to drive.
Behind the back pool shot. That's
exactly.
A good one.
So he didn't have to.
How old were you when your dad got sober?
Oh, that wasn't till like
you were way adult,
10 years ago. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it was a grind in terms of how do you can't. I learned a lot of good. You can't change somebody. They have to want to do it. All those things. But
the 3 C's, you got the 3 C's.
I got all that. Cause it
and cure it.
Totally. And so, but then it's like, but how the older I got, the more like, I don't really have to be around this if I don't want to. Once I got a car and I could, I definitely felt myself, pulling back from wanting to be around. But the only negative is my dad is such a huge supporter of my music. Like I wouldn't be who I am without him, because he loves music so much, and his stack of vinyl records are literally the encyclopedia of why I make the music I make, from bluegrass to blues to gospel to country, all that. He loves music, and he's a visual artist and painter. So I have a lot of my creativity from him.
Yeah,
a lot of those stories that I lived with him are things that wind up in songs. I wouldn't trade it.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, a happy life does not lead to a great songwriter very often.
No, absolutely.
Level. You have to have something to write it. How old were you when you started singing?
So,
when did you know?
That friend that I was telling you about that took me to the first Alateen, she was a really great, she was the friend that was pretty and in pageants, and she'd taken dance lessons and all these things that I didn't grow up getting to do things like that.
Yeah, anything that required an organized show up on time thing is bad for an alcoholic's kid.
Totally.
It just doesn't work out very well.
Yeah. So she would be
that's why you do it so well with your kids, because you wanted to make sure I'm
doing everything that I didn't get to do. So
that's great.
She
I see it.
She sang, she did all those things, and I remember she was like, one time we were outside, it sounds like a song, but at the Chattahoochee River was rolling down the road, and we were sitting by it, and she was singing, and I started kind of singing along. And if she was here, she'd tell the story that we were closing. I was trying to learn harmony. I already kind of learned, had a good ear for I thought I wanted to play bass. I thought I wanted to play guitar, but I hadn't sang. And we were sitting there singing something together, and I closed my eyes, and she would say, she stopped singing, and I kept singing with my eyes closed. And it was like, she says, she was like, "Hey, you're a really good singer." And I was like, "Really?" I was a very meek.
You're like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly and Step Brothers.
Yeah.
No, you have the voice of an angel.
She was like, "Something just happened when you sang." And I was
you actually do have the voice of an angel.
Oh, thank you. And I was like, "Really?" And she was like, "Yeah, but I was so shy, so bashful, did not want to be seen in that way." And she was like, so we started doing these little funny, Star Search or whatever all the kids, friends would, you dance, we're like 11, 12. This is all that era. And I'm staying at her house all the time, trying to get away from my home life. And because of her, she would be like, "You should be singing more." In the skit, you're the singer. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have had that
God
confidence.
Bless her and the ability to do that and put someone in front of you. One of my biggest problems with social media is that the person who wants it the most typically deserves it the least.
Yeah.
And the person who wants
point.
it the most, we have a bunch of people that are really great at social media. I'm not sure they're great at singing.
Right.
It bugs the crap out of me. There's no mystique in anything. And,
Right.
And it doesn't mean that social media is a bad medium for people to get information out there, but it's just you're good at getting the information across. What about the shy girl?
I'm curious about those folks.
I just what's it gonna? We won't see it till 20 years later. You look back on music from a long view, and you see we all know what the 80s were.
Oh yeah,
we love it. We hate it.
Absolutely.
It was happy. Everyone had more money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll look back on it 20 years later and see it. Now everyone has access to everyone.
Yeah.
And so whoever is the best at,
yeah.
I remember to post every day, so my voice is better. No,
right.
It's not really the case.
Yeah. She definitely was like, opened that door to what God was going to use as a vehicle for therapy. I mean, music, like
for other people.
My life, like everything. Cause where I, like my headspace growing up, always kind of from my family, mainly the blue collar people in my life, was kind of like, this is kind of as good as it gets. So just like, that was the no one was a dreamer. No one was like, oh, you could, and like, no, it was like,
this was not a possibility.
And it wasn't even like athletics. If you could be a good athlete, like there was no college degree. Like I was going to probably work at Porter Cable Tools or Alexander Tool Repair, which is what my grandmother actually started after, which I would go work on the summers. Like, I worked at car auctions. That was what I was going to do, and even when I was in high school thinking like, that's what I'm going to do, but God had a purpose, this is like, God had a plan that when I would sing, something would happen for me too. Like it would be almost like what I would now say spiritual. But at the time I was like, I don't know what this feeling is, but it's funny. My son the other day said, Mom, every time I love playing guitar, but when I play drums, for some reason, I feel like I'm floating. I was like, oh, awesome. I was like, oh boy.
Oh no, he's got it.
That's it. Like, when I sing at that time, especially like, even though I wasn't singing for, like Carrie was singing for the entertainment value. She was a great entertainer. I was singing like, I don't know why I'm singing, but when I sing, something happens.
Well, you had to.
And I had to.
You had to. And like our children, your kids are already super talented. But between their bloodline, if they weren't, I would be like wondering what the milkman looked like.
Right? Yeah.
Your kids are talented already, and they're going to be. But it's interesting that just dealing with my own children, their experience was not our experience.
No,
their striving is different. We worked hard, so they didn't.
Now, they don't have to.
They strive in their own ways, but those things, that the possibility of you being a cigarette smoking cashier at Family Dollar makes you the songwriter you are.
Absolutely.
Because that girl shows up a lot.
And I relate to her. I write to her.
That waitress at the truck stop.
I feel her.
Some people write it because they've heard it before.
No.
You become that girl, and that's part of
and
why you're a great songwriter.
all those little dive bars my dad took me to, and all those, alcoholics, drug addicts, guitar players, he would traipse me up and down Beale Street. And once he knew I could sing, it was like, oh boy,
it was on. You're getting
it was
up
on.
everywhere?
I was.
And how old? How old were you?
10, 11, 12, 13. I'm like, I got to meet Albert King, BB King, all the blues legends in Memphis. My dad realized, when you have a little girl that can carry around a tip jar, you can get more tips, Your
backstory is not unlike Amy Mayo's. You've just chosen to be less crazy.
Yeah, I listened to her and I was like, there's a lot of similarities.
There are similarities.
There.
Yeah. Which I imagine
absolutely
anyone with an alcoholic father that discovered they had a musically talented young daughter would be.
Oh yeah. And
probably.
And he was he loved music. And I realized that this is the hard part. Just because someone likes to sing or has a gift doesn't mean they have the gift of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like just because I sang doesn't mean I want to be the one on stage. And so that's where it was hard, because my dad would be like, hey, everybody, let's listen to my little girl sing. And I'd be like, oh gosh, I have to sing entertain for these people.
But you do have the gift of entertainment. So how do you marry those two thoughts?
I had to learn how to do that. That was not natural. And it was, though, like I said, spiritual, like something would happen. I would feel the presence of something bigger than myself when I sang. And I also when I would sing, people would cry. I can remember like, grown men crying, and I'd sing like Summertime by Janis Joplin or something. I'd be like, why are they there was a feeling like that I would get and they would get. And I was like, whoa.
It is, okay, it's going to sound patronizing because we're both sitting here, but there is a difference between a great singer and whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
And I brought Natalie up as well. There's certain things when you sing, when you tell the whole story, when you're going to tell it of I Drive Your Truck, and then you sing it. And there were times that we played together, like right after Sage died, and I could not hold I couldn't hold my shit. It was like, whew, it's spiritual. Now, it also keeps you from having every up-tempo positive hit on the radio because you go deeper and you write thicker.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is the songs that you've written a lot of great songs that people know you by 15 songs that they would hear.
Yeah.
There's thousands of other ones that are great that they don't hear. But it's funny how the cream rising to the top, the ones that you've had that make a difference, they take you, there's changed lives in those songs. They weren't just markers off, I got a number one song. And that is partially because of what it meant to you. And honestly, the escape that you probably needed at that age caused music to become the escape instead of just the thing I do to get popular.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it's more meaningful.
Yeah.
Are we going to miss that in the next generation?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, true.
What does young Jessi Alexander do for a living, knowing what songwriting is going to do? I'm just curious.
And think about escape. When you say the word escape, like immediately flash to like, being an only child. My mom's married to this new guy. We're in this strange town, and I've got vinyl records that, and I would just listen and so many people will say, I search the covers. But I almost feel like these people, these artists became like my family.
Got you through.
They got me through. And I would just, listen on such a deep level. And so, it was definitely not this normal kid. Like people like laugh at me because like, you don't know this, I was like, no, I didn't listen to that. I was listening to like Led Zeppelin. I was listening to like Led Zeppelin or like Earl Scruggs or like at a very young age. And when I think about parenting now and having a 10, 11-year-old, I would have been worried about me, I'm
sitting here. I want to escape just hearing your story.
It was pretty.
It makes me grateful for my over religion.
Yeah.
Because at least I had it.
Because I didn't have that. And I knew I was searching for something. But when I look back, it's like God was giving me all the tools in my tool belt that I use now. Like you said, like I know the dark guy in the corner at the bar. I know the working mom. I know the troubled teen. I know I know all of them. I know everybody in the room, and I have such empathy for them. And so, like you said, I'm not writing about them. I'm writing for them.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's cool.
Or you're writing as them.
As them.
You do it better than anyone I've ever been in a room with because you literally are that character. You don't have to dig too far for it to be comes off that way. There's a magic in it.
Yeah.
That's crazy because I did not realize that. I knew alcoholic dad, mom died early.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a lot more going on than
There was a lot. There was a lot of just a lot of everything, but so here's where it gets funny. My mom, so she remarries Roger. There's that's going on. And he gets, I'm just about the time I get settled into, middle school and high school and these new friends, my friend Carrie, all that.
And this is in Georgia.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not a Tennessee girl anymore, and I love Georgia, got to where I really loved it. He gets transferred again. And so I can remember like, where are we getting, he looked, there are all these places that he could have gotten transferred, and he got transferred. And I remember thinking, that's great. That's close to my dad or, my meemaw still, I could go back to Jackson, whatever. But now I know it's that it was going to get me to MTSU, which was going to get me to Nashville. Because the girl that was in Georgia, I really don't think I don't think if I stayed in Georgia, I would have done this. I really don't. Because probably Lisa would agree. Like I'm pretty much like make do with whatever you got. Like I am a dreamer and ambitious to it. I'm just a survivor. And like this is this. I don't know if like I would have packed up my car and moved to MTSU if I only had like 100 miles to go. But like I don't know. I don't know if I would have. it was in my own backyard by that point. So when we moved here and I went to MTSU, and that was like, okay. And plus, I'll think about it, I got to go through my mom's treatments at Vanderbilt. We weren't in Georgia. I got to go through the cancer walk with her here. And
it's very divine.
It was very divine.
The intervention. Yeah. It's like,
absolutely.
I mean, some people are just supposed to do something. I don't. Yeah, that's another one of my backup. Like, slow down and do what you're supposed to do. Everyone just runs to what they want to do instead of what they're good at. Like,
absolutely.
What Troy Tomlinson always says: don't do this. And as far as songwriters, he's a publisher, don't do this unless you absolutely have to. Because if you don't have to, if you think this is a good way to make a living, don't do this.
It's too hard.
It is so strange. Yes. It's very odd. We've been blessed. We've all been blessed.
Yes.
I've been writing songs since I was 12 years old. I just absolutely just started doing it. Yeah. No one told me that you need to have to do this before you do it. And then just listening to this as it unfolds. Yeah. Like, God, somebody was pushing you harder than you were pushing you. And I love that.
Yeah. When I started MTSU, it was not, I'm going to be a music business major. I didn't even think I didn't dream that big. It was like, well, I remember there was a little bit of pressure in terms from my family, and that because no one else there wasn't a lot of college degrees. It was a lot more blue collar, but or they had a college degree and they didn't use it, things like that. And I remember just going through high school going like, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm already singing by this point though. I'm like singing at truck stops or bars or anything I could do, was singing and writing and learning how to play an instrument, all those things. But when I started MTSU, I was a social work major, and I still didn't, like, looking back, I know probably the universe is laughing at me, but it's like, I just didn't dawn on me that I could actually do this.
In college, it's so great. I just love it.
I didn't believe it.
The good thing about, so whenever it clicked, the good thing about being from a group of losers.
Yeah.
I'm just not losers.
Yeah. No, I know.
Just
I know
people that don't see. I was assuming that I would be somebody working for somebody at a parts house, or I don't know.
Absolutely.
But if you're gonna not make any money anyway, why not sing?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If I'm gonna be poor and broke or whatever, I might as well be a guitar player. And be poor and broke. That would be better. So thank God for those. Yeah,
exactly. So when I got here, it was, I quit college. So that happened. I went to social work major.
That's why you're here.
Exactly. I college just wasn't for me. I was playing too many shows. I also didn't have parents that were paying my way through college in terms of, I had to have jobs to do all this. So I was working all night shifts and all these things. And I just finally moved here. And when I moved here, people always asked what did you want to do? And it's like, all I knew is I just didn't want to have a day job. I didn't want to work a Subway anymore. I wanted, can I just make a living making music? So I'm a pretty good singer, pretty good backup singer. Could I sing demos? What could I do? And I think that, people now ask me I can't believe you're not an artist, but I believe that God put me exactly where I'm supposed to be as a songwriter, because I didn't have the artist of the entertainer, like I said, gene, and I didn't have the pursuit of the self-indulgence that you need. I was way more interested in all these other stories than I just didn't want to tell my story all the time. Mm-hmm. I wanted to play all these characters. So I'm sure you're curious, how did I get from there to here? It's it started out backup singing. I loved being on the road. Loved.
For who?
Matt King.
Oh yeah, I remember Matt King.
Yes.
Wow.
And he took me out
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's
and
crazy.
So I was 20 years old.
You play guitar or just sing background?
I played tambourine, barefoot, and sang harmony, and it was a blast.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I literally, my first, it's kind of a Cinderella story, but the first, I went to one rehearsal, one at sound check. It was a audition, and I got the job, and I was on a tour bus. It's crazy. So much fun. Felt like the Cinderella story. And then the hard, oh, well, what happens when that guy, he gets dropped? Yeah. And then you don't have a gig, But because of him, he was a Warner Chappell writer. He was I was writing songs and on the side, and I'd play him my songs, and he's like, you really need to, we need to play your songs for my publisher. And it was Denny, Kurt Denny. Kurt Denny and Barbara Beeler at that time. And they were like, you're really good and you should be an artist. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like a lot of work, and I don't know. I'd already watched Matt and what he went through as an artist. And I just was very reluctant to be an artist.
I mean, I get it. I get
Songwriting, I got.
Yeah. We have a Kurt Denny story because
I love Kurt.
I don't really know him, but this is so great. Everyone tells you, I'm sure he's a great guy. But Brett and I, we moved. I mean, we were fresh off the boat, just moved to town. Clay Bradley, who has always treated us exactly the same from the first day I met him till now. He doesn't treat us all that great now, but I mean, it's never changed. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I love him. But he took us around to some publishers where we were very early, and one of them was Kurt Denny, and he was, I'll never forget. He was at Warner.
Yeah.
And he was putting into a little green in his office, which is, I hate golf. So I'm already like, okay, this guy's doing his golf thing, not really listening. And then he played a couple of our songs, and he said, you have an up-tempo song with negative lyrics. You can't do that. You guys don't really understand songwriting. You should just be artists and let other people write songs for you. And so we left that day. I never saw him ever again. And we spent the next 10 years shoving that comment up Kurt Denny's ass.
Hey.
And I'm so grateful to him for that. I wish I could thank him because it was like,
well, you're thanking him now.
You need to thank him. So anyway, and I've heard from multiple people what a great guy he is, but every now and then you just need somebody to give you the wrong thing.
Yeah. It's like, and he actually probably did exactly for you what you needed. And me, he got canned, sadly, like really quick after I signed there. And so that was my first bout of, someone can sign you, be your champion. And then 6 months later, you're,
And the Matt King thing, regardless of whenever he got dropped, he let you know that you could be in the game.
He got me in the game.
The minute you got on that tour bus with your suitcase, you're like, I can be in the game.
I can do this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love singing harmony, as you know.
Yeah.
And then I love writing songs. So, but it was, there was probably 5 years, but this is kind of where my mom comes in. So I'm 20, 21, just getting my feet wet here in Nashville, 22. And she is 50 and she gets her first, what they thought was an ovarian cyst, her first bout with cancer. And I mean, I'm so like young and wild and living hard. Like I just got to Nashville. I'm like, it was such a like, what? Like this other side thing that how do I cope with that? How do I help you do that? And I tried really hard to be like the daughter that she needed. Mm-hmm. And yet like, I'm like playing all night Third and Lindsley, I'm singing a R&B band, I'm doing all these other things. So it was a really hard way to grow up. Like because I think you really grow up in your early 20s. And so it was like, I had to come to terms with that. And it was those are hard years just because it was so much of everything. So much of trying to get my feet on the ground as an artist, as a singer, songwriter. And then that.
Part of you had to go, not now.
Yeah.
I'm figuring out what I'm here for.
Absolutely. And also you spend most of your, teens and early 20s to your mom being like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, you're my mom, whatever. And I didn't get her biscuit recipe. I hadn't asked her if was I, C-section or was I like, all the things that you typically ask your mom or, you do that when you're getting married or you're like, I hadn't done all that and hadn't even thought about doing that. And there was so much that we hadn't worked through, there was a lot of dark, deep, wounds there. And so we didn't even have time to work through that because it was like, we got cancer and we're going to be going to Vandy and we got to get this cyst out. She had to have a full hysterectomy, obviously. And I spent all basically my career just came to a screeching halt. Being the only child, it was like, this is my job now. Mm-hmm. And anybody that knows me knows when I go in, I go all in. So it was like almost maybe, I don't know if that's healthy, because I just give my whole self because I don't know how else to do it.
But I wouldn't judge someone who didn't do that either. Maybe that.
Yeah. But I did. I went in hard and it seemed like it was going to be okay. Ovarian cancer is so tricky, because it's such a silent killer. who knows how long it had been growing. And they thought they got it all. Of course, we had to do all the chemo. I got to be real familiar with that chemo floor and would sit there with her endlessly and all the sickness. Just watching someone die of cancer.
What's your take on chemo? I'll say this. At this moment right now, if I got really bad cancer and they said, you're going to take chemo, I get, no, I'm not.
It's hard because I don't have a positive, like, I don't have the story of chemo works.
I don't
know. So, I don't know. Yeah. I don't. All I know is I don't know a better word than gross. It's a gross medicine. You vomit, you lose your hair, you lose weight, you deteriorate. It kills you in some ways to heal you, I guess. So I don't have necessarily a great viewpoint on chemo.
Sounds like a COVID vaccine.
It was also 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Even more.
Who knows where we're at now? It was very barbaric. It was, and watching her, who's not that older than I am now, like, it's just like amazing to think like, wow, like how scary that has to have been to go through that.
Yeah. You're closer to her age now than
now. Yeah. And I was just so young to be dealing with something like that. It was very, very hard. I had to learn quickly how to talk to a doctor, how to keep her medicines in order. The
second husband still in the picture?
He was, but sadly he was alcoholic as well. So he was the first time around not very present he did his best. I don't want to give Roger, he passed away last year. I don't want to ever. He did the best he could.
It's not always disparaging to be honest about something. When you are truly a functioning alcoholic, and to be fair about your mom, when my counselor at Cumberland Heights told my wife, if you were in a room with 1,000 people, you would have found Brad. So that's why you have to do work too.
Absolutely.
Like, why do I have to do work when it's his problem? But your mom was going to find him. Yeah,
it was familiar, and so Roger did his best. But really, I feel like the spiritual, the emotional part needed to come from me. And I know it was scary. I mean, I'll never forget, hearing the word terminal and not really knowing exactly what that meant and realizing we're going to work really hard at something that we're not going to win. Like, we're just going to try to keep you comfortable for it. But let me rewind a second, because there might be someone listening that has walked this walk with cancer, and it is such a game of numbers, because you're doing these tests and you're like, ooh, I think the chemo's working. And so we went through that where she, like I said, we did the hysterectomy, she did the chemo, and you start to do a thing where you get and I don't know what it's like nowadays, but you get the numbers, and then the better the numbers stay, the least time you have to come in and get your numbers checked. So we were just at the point where her hair was starting to grow back. She got a job. I started maybe okay. I was going to make a record. I got signed to MCA. Some good things happened during that time. And as a 23-year-old, I'm like, okay, my mom's good. I can get back to my life. I can get back to what I'm doing here. And that's when I met JR, actually. So it was right around that time, I was starting to write songs and starting to get some cuts, and things were really rocking for me. And then I can just remember it was yesterday when she called me and she was like, I hate to tell you this, but the cancer's back. And I swear, Brad, I knew that second. I was like, this is it. I don't know why. It was almost the way she said it. It was like, I could feel from her, I'm going to have to fight as hard as I fought, and I don't have the fight.
I don't have another one.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was
totally know.
I don't know if I can do it again. And I was like, this is going to be rough. And it was.
And that, the knowledge, boy, it's weird. It's only happened to me a few times.
Yeah.
But when someone's, it's over.
Yeah. You just know.
And that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was when all systems down.
So then obviously your career is whatever, what am I going to do? You don't have
I'm done. It's like, whatever this record I've been making in Memphis, I just rolled through the motions. The guy that signed me at MCA gets canned. Luke Lewis comes in. He drops me pretty quick, which I was like, fine. And no one even knows what all I'm going through because live a pretty private.
I was going to say, you're not very public about it. Which is,
I think it's like, that's probably comes from my meemaw. And like, I watched probably how she dealt with the grief. And it's just like, you just work. You just go to work.
I admire that.
You work and you just grind. Like, you don't complain. You know, I just didn't know how to deal with it. None of my peers were dealing with anything like this. And it's like, I'm not the kind of person that says like, poor me.
Yeah.
It just isn't in my nature. So I just get to work.
That makes it harder? That you're, by the way, I respect it because you're sparing everyone else's feelings. And I'm just going to carry the whole weight of it. And I'm going to respect your feelings. The truth is, my boundaryless instincts are to just only be around people I can tell. Yeah. Dump the whole load on them. Same. And then we all share it to the amount of like getting through. And I'm not sure, by the way, that I recognize balance as I'm swinging past it. So I'm not sure where the balance is, but it seems like it would be a lot to take on and not share that with people who are expecting you to be creative at this moment.
I think it's because like, it's like, how do you just talk about it casually? It's like, well, how much time? It's going to wreck the whole day. It's going to wreck it's like, I have always had, and I can think of some crazy experiences where I've had a way of putting my feeling aside and just be mental and just go to work. And I think that's a superpower in some ways.
Absolutely is.
It helps me in the writes where I can like, when a song like I Drive Your Truck comes in, it's like, I can write that with my heart and my mind. And like,
I was going to say, don't you think the best things are when it's all out there on the table?
I know.
Don't you feel like the best writes are usually with people who you can absolutely lay flat?
Go there.
Just dump it all out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's harder to write with someone you don't know as well. And you wind up writing something really surface and shallow.
Shallow. Yeah. And as you can hear, like a lot of these stories or a lot of this ingredients of my life are heavy. And like, you don't want to talk about, stuff with stage without someone that we don't want to go too deep unless they see you.
Right. Like you said before, it deserves amount
more
of energy and time. So I can't just, I'm at the stage now in this process where people can say, how many children do you have? Well, I always say 3. I've never said 2.
Yeah.
But I can say I have 2 kids. And if they ask or I have 3 kids. And if they ask how old they are, I'd tell them, well, we lost our oldest son when he was 21. And then I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. And, that can be it. I couldn't do that before this year, but that is something that I would have to either say 3. And I used to say 1 in the high school, 1 in college, 1 in heaven, but now they're older. So that one doesn't work anymore. So it is finding a way to like respect what that is, but also not have to drag everyone into the whole in order to have the information. It's really tricky. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
I think that's the workaholic though. The unhealthy, the stuff that I have to work through is just work. If I can just work, I know how to do that.
If work is a gig, like playing, I can go play on the darkest, weirdest day of my life and feel better. In fact, when Brent and I start on stage playing, everything goes away. If we're fighting with each other, if I'm having a terrible day, whatever it was, if we start playing together, it all goes away. We're just playing and it's so great.
Exactly.
When I have to meet somebody afterwards, as I'm in grief,
that's the
and
work.
grieving my son.
That's the work, yeah.
And then we got to meet somebody and they're talking about children. And I mean, for 3 years, it was like, holy cow, I don't know if I can do this.
Brutal.
Now, so the choice for me was, I'm going to start a podcast where everyone knows my deepest, darkest, whatever. And that helped. But so playing, I get the workaholic. Was it hard to write without people knowing?
It's, no, because I'm awesome at pretending that everything's fine. Denial. And I'm so focused and present when I work that it's like, I'm like the good and the bad of that. But it was hard to watch my dreams or whatever I thought was going to happen. It wasn't even really my dream necessarily to be an artist, but the first taste of here, this happens and then this happens and then this great stuff's going to happen. To watch that just crumble and my mom crumble at the same time. It was just such a surreal, like empty, like, and like, because I kind of dealt with this with my granddaddy, it was like, Oh yeah. I mean, I know the good old grief.
Yeah.
There it is. I know you,
you know,
I know you, but we're skipping a pretty big part that's important to the story is through these years, I've found faith, my own faith, which was very cool. I'm grateful that I don't have the story that so many have of church, growing up in church, because when I found it, it was mine. Like nobody gave it to me. And it's just been a really fun, unorthodox, winding road.
Where did it start?
I mean, the very first time was actually at my granddaddy's funeral. I remember, I think it was an angel, but a man came to me. I can remember even what he looks like. He was in a suit, and he kind of leaned down and he said, "Honey, this can be really hard for you." And I was like, "Yeah," because everybody knew that I was I was granddaddy's favorite, of all the cousins. But he said, "It's gonna be really hard, I know," and I was a hot mess. He said, "But you hold on to this because it's going to get you through." And I was a little silver cross, and he just put it in my hand, and he said, probably said something beautiful about Jesus or God or whatever, who I didn't know. And he said, you're gonna get through. And I don't know, that was my first like spiritual moment, I guess, with a God moment. And I remember just thinking that, holding on to that cross, and that cross went back to Georgia with me and kind of got me through. But I dated guys that were Christians, and I'd go to church with them. I was so fascinated. I loved the church home because I was like, wow, these people love each other. I didn't know the dark sides of church.
We're all drawn to what's missing.
I was drawn to the family.
Yeah.
Oh,
there is something
community.
Great about I give a lot of grief on here to church and whatever, but Christianity just on its face of just the 10 commandments are not like some kind of browbeating thing from someone that's mad at you. It's like, here's a way to live more peacefully, better, and have a much better life in society. So just based on the love that's supposed to be there in the community that you have and the support, and that you just call people and you don't even know they come bring you food when something happens like that. Yeah. Being completely absent of that.
And when you're an only child that's lived like kind of a loner life, and you
really
kind of see these
alone.
people like, wow, this is really cool. I didn't get into the, theology of things, and I'm not a academic type. So I was there for the, wow, this is the spirituality of the feelings. But I also recognized that I felt like a little bit of a broken, like a lot of these people seemed like they had a lot of things figured out. And I was like, I'm still figuring it out. So I'm very non-committal when it comes to like wanting to put myself in a box. So I'd tiptoe into this, and I'd go, some of that I like, some of it I don't. I pull back, and then I would
so wonderful
research. A lot of my early 20s were researching like my mom's great grandmother was Native American, so I grew up knowing about that, and so I went down that path for a little while, thinking about Native American spirituality, or I would all kinds of things. I would to college. The couple of years that I was there, I took a philosophy class or spiritual class. I was very intrigued, and interesting that I've never had the relationship with God that's the mean, bad God. The only God I know is the God that's like, and it's maybe how I choose to see it, but I have the comforter. I have the spiritual being, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't have like the doctrine.
It's amazing because I have the comforter now too, but I didn't until 4 years ago.
Wow.
I did not.
Yeah.
I found a God of my understanding in recovery that was there, but the God of comfort, the God who doesn't promise you nothing bad will happen, but will hold your hand and walk through it with you, the friend.
Yes.
I found that when my son died. After all the crazy, and it's the same God. It's just, unfortunately, and maybe this is my excuse for not doing more research, but the people do the most work in theology and doctrine and are most committed to dogma seem to be the least kind, least happy, most fearful group of people I've ever met. Yeah. And that includes some people that I love very much. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't
you're
want
angry
that. You're angry.
Yeah.
You're scared. You're scared.
So scared.
The fear and the fear is really gripping. I have to work really hard at not having like spiritual fear. But that comfort God that you have, well, you met you met the great guy right away.
I did.
I mean, and there's something wonderful about the fact that you chose it and how you obviously have a good soul, because I'm afraid that if I had been in your shoes, I'd have never made it to 25.
But here's the thing. Okay, so I actually felt like I always had presence of God, because I can remember watching all this craziness go on, you know, whether it be, and almost feel like there was a presence always like, well, this sounds crazy, but like whispering in my ear, yep, these people are kind of crazy. I'm sorry, they're your parents. I'm sorry, this is but I've got you. I always felt that. I always felt like I've got you. And there's something beyond this, and there's a reason. And almost like I was observing the play that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I still feel like that. It's very surreal. Maybe it's all psychological and I choose to see it that way, but I just felt like the presence of God was always with me. And I think that I'm proud of that in a way, because, you know, being a parent and trying to, you know, share things with them, I have such a great acknowledgement of like, my kids' faith is their faith.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to have it exactly how they have it, because I got that luxury. Whereas my husband was raised in the church in a certain way. And
he feels more like me about it a little bit. I feel like a little bit, just, you know, and, on the Beatitude, blessed are they that mourn, for they will be comforted. My friend Al Andrews has a sermon on that it basically stating, you know, inferring that if you don't mourn, then you're not going to be comforted. You're this little kid mourning.
Yeah.
That's just God's natures to come in and comfort you somehow. Because how would you keep from completely going crazy? Off the rails. There's something much less dogmatic, much more natural and sweet about God than I ever knew. And it doesn't mean that the people were all wrong that I grew up with. But there's something about finding it yourself and loving, having your children find it themselves. It's just the need for God is so much more important than the thirst for knowledge.
Yeah. Oh.
And when I'm at the place where I need him in that religion, okay, let's argue about how long the earth's been here and whatever. And, you know, who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. It's like,
what's a sin? What's not a sin?
Yeah. And when does sin begin? You know, they said that with the dating classes in church. When does sin begin? You know, is it the hand on the leg or
the wink?
But and I'm not saying that sin is good. It's not. It causes us pain later on. It's one of those things like in the 10 Commandments, which common sense tells us this is the better way to live life. It is better for marriages and relationships if we have waited to have sex before we got married. Those are great things. But we don't condemn, because most of us don't get there. So we condemn that person to hell and damnation for. It just feels like it's been misused. The Bible has been used like a weapon.
Absolutely.
On me, around me.
I'm sure.
I watch it. And when I hear your story, I'm like, oh man, I don't envy your story, but I love the sweetness of God that I never knew before coming to you at an earlier age.
It does feel like I said, a luxury in terms when I see people that have a lot of like, you know, they know a different God, you know, like I feel grateful that's not the God I know. I always felt like it's always been a very special relationship for me, and just grows and keeps growing and changing. And boy, did I not, I mean, who knew how bad I would need it to when she passed? Cause it was like, whew, that's when your faith really gets tested.
And how many years after she was 50 when she got diagnosed?
And she died at 52. So that first, 6 months of treatment, like I said, she went in remission for about 6 months. And then when they told us she had it again, I think it was in July, we're coming up on the anniversary of 20 years. She died in May. So like it was, that was the last Christmas, the last Easter, the last Mother's Day. But me and JR were like moving in together. Like I look at God was giving me like this really sad thing, but what was cool is he got to meet her and like things like that so many of my people in life don't know her,
If you had met him 2 years later, that you're married to a guy that never met your mom, and it's so different that he got to meet her. I think we've even talked about that. And also, I'm sure that you've had the feeling like God didn't leave me alone.
Totally. 100. And if he was here, he'd probably tell you, he'd cry through it. He wouldn't be able to talk. But I think there was an encounter in the hospital room where I left, and it was a little bit of like, you've got her,
and
so,
sure.
I think they had some good conversations, but it just was surreal because anybody that's listening or knows about terminal illness and just what that entails, a lot of my grief therapy did not necessarily have to do with losing my mom. It was the trauma of the hospital, the trauma of the doctors, the trauma of the surgeries, the chemo, the IV drip, all my first hardship was all around the nightmares, I'd gone through Vietnam in my mind. Like it was my own personal Vietnam. And I kept feeling like, but she kind of like won in a way, like she won the war, you know? And I'm here holding the bag of like the backpack of wounds, you know? So a lot of my grief therapy that I've been doing is walking back through those hallways and, you know, like literally and mentally, like going to like the death, the chemo, the trauma of it, you know, because it's so hard. Yeah.
My dad's the first person. I mean, I guess I lost a grandparent, but my dad died at 60. I was like 30. It was way too early, and I never lost anyone.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange thing the first time on. But I have a big family. Even in dysfunction, when we were alcoholics, my mom, who I give plenty of grief to, was praying for me, and my sisters who have, if they've sinned, it's probably been on two hands, you know, they're like little angels. And, but they loved us and they were praying for us, and we had something there. I mean, you were really kind of by yourself.
Totally by myself.
Oof, that's a lot.
Totally by myself. And not equipped with what I had to go through. I just didn't. I mean, I had faith. I know you're going to ask me later because I listen to all these podcasts, but my favorite thing is, can I go ahead and tell you my worst thing that ever happened?
Yes.
Because it goes right here. Obviously the worst thing was watching her die. I mean, I was there, you know,
the actual moment.
Yeah. And it took days. It took several days, and which is hard, you know, and I want to talk about hospice for a second, because hospice is, for people going through that, it's like, you know that these people are going to come in and help. Hospice, you know, everyone knows, whoa, we're calling in hospice. You think like the army and coming in, you know?
Yeah.
But my mom chose to be at home. And so it's like all the medical, the nurses, the IVs, the bedpan, you know, everything's gone, you know, and you're just kind of there. And hospice is there for you when she passes, or for pain management and things like that. But boy, the real work and the trauma or the PTSD or whatever, those days of like, you know, her like losing consciousness, things like her body starts to break down, and you're like, isn't there someone that's going to come tell me what's I'm supposed to do here right now? And it was very, very hard, you know, to watch someone die, like just watch the human body deteriorate, like little by little, day by day.
Over months?
Yeah, well, months we're in the hospital and things, but like those final days, you know, and it was hard because I'd watch the movies of like, you're going to have someone's on their dying bed and she's going to get to say something and I'm going to say something. And you know, that didn't happen.
I truly, and anyone's watched any of these knows that I study near-death experiences like them. I truly believe it's a beautiful experience, transition for them. Not for us. Not for us.
No,
it sucks.
No.
It's weird. It smells bad.
It smells. It's gross. It's the human body.
Yeah. We're left here with.
Yeah. And then when you know it's going to happen, and anybody that's lived this, it's like, you're almost ready for it to happen because it's going to happen. And it's the worst thing that's ever going to happen, but it's also like a war that you're fighting. And it was just really hard to sit there day after day after day and try to care for her. And Roger was doing his best, but neither of us were, I mean, I'm 23 years old, you know, it's like not what I'm skilled to do. But those days were the grief work that I've done is those days, really. But we knew the end was near, and you kind of can't make this stuff up. But my dad happened to be in a rehab facility in Nashville, which, he lives in West Tennessee, but he happened to be there he had been arrested and in and out of jail, but the only way he could stay out was if he went to this rehab. So it was really nice or not nice, but kind of crazy that my mom's dying and my dad's in this rehab, and it's like all this is going on. So I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with him, dealing with her. And she, and like I said, me and JR are just starting to be together, which was awesome. But those last couple days, I'm kind of back and forth and trying to be present for her and wanting to be there. And Life Hospice had told me, look, you might not be there. Some patients, they want to go on their own. Some patients want you to be there. But I felt like the end was near, and I raised all the windows, and it was, just like lit candles, just trying to just do something. I don't know. You just feel like I want to do something to help make this special for her. And I'd, sang to her. I'd talked to her. She'd been gone mentally for 3 or 4 days. But, when someone's dying, they'll kind of have like a rush of energy will come back, or like we'd ridden all those waves, and they told me like, that's probably going to happen. It's normal. So the worst thing that ever happened was the moment she passed. I was sitting right there, and I can just remember those last breaths. You're like, is that the one, And she took it, and then I remember wanting to know what time it was. So I looked at the time, and I was like, okay, it's whatever, 11:32. But when I looked back, it was like, not my mom, in the best way. It was like shocking. It was like whatever faith I had was tripled. She wasn't my mom. I can't even explain it. Listen to Jimmy, at least let's talk about heaven. It's like, what a gift. I mean, I haven't had the near death, but I saw death and life, or I saw life go to death so quickly. Like when I say to you, when I looked over there for 1 second and when I looked back, it was like the most shocking shock of my life. Like, you're not my mom. Like, my mom's gone. Poof.
And you knew.
Knew. And I also was like, I felt this wave of like great gratitude, a glimpse of heaven. Like, wow.
And you felt peace. And you shouldn't have felt peace. Like,
so much peace. I've never shared this, but so much peace that 2 days later, when they nickel and diming us over the casket and all the funeral arrangements, and I'm having to do all this, and they're like, well, it's this much for this and this much for this. And they were like, it's this much for hair and makeup. I was like, hair and makeup. I was like, I'll do the hair and makeup. That's how crazy.
No way.
She was not my mom. That body in front of me, that quickly.
It's not, yeah.
And that I was able to do that I still can't believe I did it. I still can't believe I walked in that funeral home and did my own mom's hair and makeup, whatever.
You're a tough cookie.
But it's only because of the reality I saw. You wouldn't have thought anything of it either if you'd seen what I saw. Because I swear to you, I looked at my mom, I looked away, and I looked back, and she was gone. Like that. And whatever faith I had, like I said, was just, it just rained over me, the faith that I have today.